Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to the Future History Project. We're rolling along, and we're at week 22, and this is part one with the third book from Robot City, and that one was called Cyborg, by written by William F. Wu, the same writer who wrote the six Robots in Time books. This was written in 1987, and there is an interesting um, introduction. Well, each of the books have an introduction by Isaac Asimov, and I'd like to read a little bit of it because it's quite interesting. A robot is a robot, and an organism is an organism. An organism, as we all know, is built up of cells. From the molecular standpoint, its key molecules are nucleics, acids, and proteins. These float in a watery medium, and the whole is a bony support system. It is useless to go on with the description since we are all familiar with organisms and since we are examples of them ourselves. A robot, on the other hand, is, as usually pictured in science fiction, an object, more or less resembling a human being, constructed out of strong, rust resistant metal. Science fiction writers are generally chary of describing the robotic details too closely since they are not usually essential to the story, and the writers are generally at a loss of how to do so. The impression one gets from the stories, however, is that a robot is wired, so that it has wires through which electricity flows rather than tubes through which blood flows. The ultimate source of power is either unnamed or is assumed to partake of the nature of nuclear power. What are the robotic brain? When I wrote my first few robot stories in 1939 and 40, I imagined a positronic brain of a spongy type of platinum iridium alloy. It was platinum iridium because this is a particularly inert metal and it is least likely to undergo chemical changes. It was spongy so that it would offer an enormous surface on which electrical patterns could be formed and unformed. It was positronic because 4 years before my first robot story, the positron had been discovered as a reverse kind of electron, so that positronic in place of electronic had a delightful science fiction sound. Nowadays, of course, my positronic platinum iridium brain is hopelessly archaic. Even 10 years after its invention, it became outmoded. By the end of the 1940s, we came to realize that a robot's brain must be a kind of computer. Indeed, if a robot were to be as complex as the robots in my most recent novels, the robot brain computer must be every bit as complex as the human brain. It must be made of tiny microchips, no larger, and as complex as brain cells. But now let us try to imagine something that is neither organism or nor robot, but a combination of the two. Perhaps we can think of it as an organism robot or Orbot. That would clearly be a poor name, for it's only robot with the first two letters transposed. To say Orgabot instead is to be stuck with a rather ugly word. We might call it a robot organism or robotanism, which again is ugly, or Roborg. To my ears, Robarg doesn't sound bad, but we can't have that. Something else has arisen. Then he goes in and talks about cybernetics and cyborg. But the interesting thing that I found there was that despite, uh, you know, uh, the positronic brain not working, it still persisted. It still has persisted in his stories, and it's fiction, so why not? The other thing that I found interesting was that, yeah, like in these stories, in the newer ones, like in this story here too, they have a computer and they name a computer. This is 1987. So again, when Asimov was writing this at the beginning, computers weren't thought of in that way. A lot of times it was called a brain, in a sense, or the positronic brain in place of a computer. But anyway, let's get back to the story. Cyborg. We're still on the planet Robot City, where robots are sort of they're made up of, or the city is made up of almost like cells in a sense. Like they connect together and they sort of grow, and they're actually smart cells, if you could call it that, which have the three laws of robotics. And we found out that Derek, or David Derek, and Catherine as had shown up there through a device called a key that's a perihelion key. They don't know where this was from. It was discovered on the asteroid, or the planetoid, that Derek crash land on. He has amnesia, and and then he meets Kate, where he gets captured by some aliens, and they escape, and then they wind up on Robot City. But now they find that they've stopped the crisis that was in the previous book of the city, thinking that there was a contagion with the blood from another human that was there. So that's all settled down, and the building has gone on normally. Now, we found out a few things about what's happening there. Um, Kate is not her real name. She is from Aurora. Her name is Ariel Welsh, a very, very prominent and rich family, but she has a disease, so therefore she's been sort of banished from Aurora because of this disease. The disease, as of yet, is unnamed, but she is dying of this disease, and she wants to leave the planet. And there doesn't seem to be any hyperlink communication, but she is something that's come out in this, that she knew something about this planet because her mother gave some funding to a Dr. Averill, who had an idea to build something like this. And he had disappeared. They don't know what's happened to him. And they do know that there has been somebody recently, a human, on the planet in the tower that they found. They don't know if it's the doctor or not. But then while he's searching through the computer is very fragmented, the information. So he's trying to realign everything, but he's asking it questions, and he finds that there's three other humans that are there. There are three others, and so they try to find them. And what it's turned out is there was a student that was on a spaceship going to another planet for college, that they ran into trouble, and there was a life pod that was sent out, and he was the only survivor. But the robots had to take his brain and put it in a robotic body because his body was too badly damaged, and they didn't have enough information to fix him. So they wake him up, and he proceeds to being a snot-nosed teenager in many ways. But then there's also they find out a hormonal balance. There are some problems with this. But they do track him down. They get him. But also too, what's happened is their friends that they made, like the robot that he made, Alpha, on the spaceship, and the little sort of short furry alien, Wolfrith, or however her name is pronounced, wound up there. And but I'm not sure how through the story they thought one of the robots was human. I can understand the robots thinking that the alien was, but anyway, they sort of solve everything, and there is a life pod that was augmented by Alpha, the robot, in order to get there. And one of them can leave, and it was going to be a Kate / Ariel, but they do the robots actually, by scanning Derek, can know the inside of a human, and they were able to reconstruct and repair the body of this young teen, this 19-year-old, 18-year-old. So they send him off at the end, and there's still the question of what's happening there, obviously. And there's a few other things, but it's an okay story. It just seems that, I don't know. I had a bad feeling that it being William F. Wu again, that he sort of, the other first two stories were good. I really enjoyed them. I found them very fun. But for some reason, this one, he's done it juvenile again. He's got stupid eye rolling things that happen in there, and he repeats stuff too much. And repeating of what happened, like, repeating about the three laws of robot more than once, and other things, like, it's like, oh, here's the recap now in this chapter, and oh, here's another recap in the next chapter, and I just found it tiresome that way. So I'm saddened to know that the sixth volume, the final volume, is written by him as well. But anyway, it's an okay story. They are short books. They are very quick reads. So that works. And I'm looking forward to the next one, which I'll probably be reading tomorrow. I think. Yeah, this is Monday, so I'll probably be reading it tomorrow. It is. Oh, I got it upside down. It is Prodigy by Arthur Brian Cover, an author that I don't know. And this was written again. Oh, this was written in 1988, so it's a year after. But again, has another introduction by Isaac Asimov. So I'll be reading that shortly, and that'll be part 2 of week 22. So yeah, so if the few that are following along, I'd love to know what you thought of Cyborg by William F. Wu, and also too in comparison to the first two volumes, or the first two books of Robot City. I'll see you next time, BookTube. Take care.